Listen, I was reading the great John Clayton in the Washington Post as we switched some way to football, and I saw your top 50 rankings in terms of talent. And I love that you do both. You do the mock draft and you do the in terms of talent because I think that there is definitely a differentiation between the two. Some teams pick best available players, some teams pick what they need. You had Chase Young ahead of Joe Burrow in terms of prospect talent. What's been the reaction from the insiders to you putting Chase Young ahead of Joe Burrow?
It's no different than last year when most of us, me included, put Nick Bosa ahead of Kyler Murray because you look at how good this player was, and again, Kyler Murray had the fantastic year. He's going to be a very good quarterback, and again, quarterbacks are the most important thing for any National Football League team. But in the end, it's like Chase Young is a generational type of player. The comparables with him. One would just be Julius Peppers, which I think is a very good comparable. And Peppers was the first pick in the draft of the Carolina Panthers years ago. So I just have to go. And there's a thought that Chase Young could be better than Bosa. Whatever it is, he's good enough that he should be the number one pick.
John Clayton here.
Because the quarterback is number one.
I hear you. He is special. He is special in every sense of the word, and it's not a wrong opinion based on everyone you hear and all the tape that's out there. John Clayton joining us here on Tim and Sid with the NFL draft now a little over 24 hours away. John, what on earth are the Dolphins going to do here? Do you think they hold at 5? And if they do, what do they do with that pick?
Yeah, I think the more they squirm and kind of get word out that they're doing all these different things, the more it tells me that they're going to stay at 5 and not do anything. I think in some ways, they're trying to, because the one story that came out today was just silly. They're going to trade from 5 to 3 and take an offensive tackle. Well, I mean, you can get the second best offensive tackle at 4. Why do you have to trade up, for either Becton or Wills when you can, you're going to get either one with the 5th pick if you want that? I still think they take 2, and I think what they're doing is they're trying to get the idea that you have the Chargers, who do have concerns about the injury history of Tua, and trade up to 3. And remember, I mean, there's some friendships involved there because Detroit wants to trade down because they can get any of the top 3 remaining defensive players, and they can come back and get some draft choice value for that. But the Chargers and the general manager Tom Telesco is not big on taking injured players, and so because of that, and particularly in college, because again they think it's going to carry over to the pros. Justin Herbert's their guy, so I think they trade up 2 spots to get him, and then they're clear to get Tua at the number 5 pick.
So we've mentioned Herbert, we've mentioned Tua, we've mentioned Joe Burrow. How many do you see in the first round, and does it end at Love? It all begins with Love.
I don't know if Love's going to make it, to be honest.
Oh, yeah?
I think Jordan Love, there's going to be, because what happens is I thought maybe for a while New England would take him at 23, and at this stage the only quarterback that they would take in the first round would be Tua. So if Tua would start falling to 9, they're going to be calling Arizona at 8 and see if they can work something out there. But in the case of Love, I think they take a position player, maybe Xavier McKinney, over a quarterback, and then get a quarterback maybe in round 3. Because clearly they've got to get a quarterback somewhere in the first 3 rounds. They don't have a second-round draft choice. And so, they've got to do something because, again, it's a good year to be able to do it. You can get some good value. But I see Love right now maybe falling out of the first round. But I could also see if there's a team interested in trading up for him between 27 and 32, that's where that team would be able to get him in a trade up.
It is NFL Draft Eve. John Clayton joining us today on Tim and Sid. John, it seems strange, but with all the other intrigue going on right now in this draft, there's a part of me that almost thinks we haven't talked Joe Burrow enough. And we all know how it's going to end, and we know where he's going to go. Based on all the tape you've seen of this kid, what's the comp? Who does he most remind you of in all your time covering the game?
It's kind of weird because, there's thoughts that maybe you look at him like Andy Dalton, which, of course, that's probably a little bit of a slight. There's a comparable there. I mean, some have the comparables that, maybe you're looking at Drew Brees. That'd be probably a good comparison. But, I mean, he's so smooth. He's such a good leader. He's spotless as far as all those different things. He doesn't have the strongest arm. Drew Brees didn't have the strongest arm. But I think that's maybe one of the comparables to him. And, obviously Brees had a Hall of Fame career. He didn't go in the first round. Now you find out that he probably should have. And then, you look at him, he's got great accuracy, Burrow does. He's got good leadership. He's solid as a person and all that. And again, he's a perfect choice for Cincinnati. I mean, the only thing that I think was going up front is that he was a little resistant from working with Jordan Palmer, Carson Palmer's brother, that the worry was that he goes to the Bengals and they don't do anything to try to win. Well, I mean, now you look at it, they spent over $122 million in contracts and free agency, and they're still not going to be able to win, but at least they showed an effort. It's like, hey, we're out there trying to do the best we can. And now, even though he's a Northern Ohio guy, he's comfortable, I think, going to Cincinnati. That's why I think it's like, you don't need to talk about something too much that should happen and is the right thing.
If you've watched football in your life, you know the voice of John Clayton, who is joining us. He is the host of the podcast School with a Professor. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts right now. There are two Canadians in the mix, John. Chase Claypool, receiver out of Notre Dame, who impressed at the Combine. Neville Gallimore of Oklahoma, who I know got a little bit of publicity today when someone showed this defensive tackle dunking from a standing jump. But neither made your top 50 prospects. How close were they, if at all, to making your top 50 prospects?
They were really close because, pretty much the next guys, because, like in the case of Claypool, he's been one of the guys rising up in the boards. I know he's in a lot of 50s because, he's big. Some people, because again, it's a bad tight end draft, and I know he's a wide receiver. Some think he can even make the conversion to be a tight end. All I know is that he can work the middle of the field and be very good. And Gallimore is a guy that, was right on the verge of making it, because again, he probably, where it comes down to is that I'm looking at him, going in both those guys. I mean, for example, in the case of Claypool, I have him really going about maybe 54, 55, somewhere in that range. And Gallimore, I think that he's a candidate for Seattle, and Seattle would be at 59. And so they were close to the 50, just didn't make it. But they're in the mix because I think both are clear second-round picks. And it comes down to at receiver or at the defensive tackle is which team likes what. Like, for example, I think Seattle likes Gallimore, so I can see that being a very good possibility there. And then you see other teams, like you kind of wonder, is that going to be something that's going to appeal to a New England Patriots team? Because, again, they've got to get a tight end. I think they'll probably take a different one. But, Claypool is in a real good spot.
John Clayton from the School with the Professor podcast. John has been one of the best in the business for a long time. We always appreciate when he comes on, especially the day before the draft. John, enjoy the draft and enjoy all the technical malfunctions that will inevitably take place tomorrow night, like the rest of us. Enjoy.
Yeah. My favorite was a coach who was talking to Diana Rossini of ESPN, and they were on a speakerphone, and all of a sudden the two kids of the coach ended up, being on the iPad and knocking the whole system out because it ate up too much bandwidth. And all you hear was the coach yelling at the kids, "Get rid of those iPads! You got to get rid of them!" It's pretty funny.
It sounds like my house right now. John, always appreciate the conversation. Stay well, and hopefully soon we get out of this and we can have a drink or two along the way.
That'll be great.
Yes, it would.
Yes, it would.
All right.
Yes, it would. Take care, John.
John Clayton, the legend,
thanks.
the man, the myth, the legend. So Neville Gallimore out of Oklahoma by way of Ottawa. He's projected in the second round, and that's where your top 50 is. Chase Claypool, the same thing. And we talked about him while we were still in studio, Sid. 6'4", 238, and ran a 4.42 at the Combine. That's why he's kind of the tweener. By the way, shout out to Abbotsford Senior Secondary School.